Born in Brood, England in 1823, Teresa Wright was the daughter of John and Sarah Wright. When she was 22 years old, she and Frederick Rimmer, a bootmaker, were married in the Catholic Church in Wolverhampton, England. Frederick's sister persuaded him to leave England for America, but young Teresa did not want to go. In her autobiography, she later wrote, "I went to the priest to ask him if I had to go, for I hated to leave home, my dear mother, brother, and sisters. All he said was, I must go with him to the end of the world if I did not want to offend God. So I had to come." It was not an easy voyage. Teresa was only 28 years old when she boarded a packet ship in Liverpool to go to America with Frederick and her 3 small children under the age of 5, Mary, Willie, and Teresa. The trip took longer than usual, and the passengers ran short of food. 2 infants died and were buried at sea. Teresa later told of the sorrow of a young woman who had to bury her baby at sea. She sat up with her all night, trying to console her, knowing how badly she felt. It was all the woman could bear to see the captain of the ship give the signal to slide the child overboard. The woman mourned the fact that she would never have the consolation of placing her baby in a grave other than the sea. On the journey across the ocean, one of the crew members made a bet with Teresa's husband that he could not jump in the ocean and get back on the ship. Frederick took the bet and jumped overboard. Someone immediately yelled, "Man overboard!" and he was rescued, but he incurred the anger of the captain and he gave his young wife considerable cause for worry. Teresa Rimmer later wrote in her autobiography, "We set sail on the ship called the Great Western. I had 3 small children, and I cannot tell what I went through on the ship. My husband was so boyish and careless, which made it very hard for me, but I just put my trust in God, and He helped me over the sea." For a short time, Teresa and Frederick lived near Newton Center, Massachusetts. There, they enrolled their daughter Mary in school. Pupils at the school were asked to provide their own desks, and the little table used as Mary's desk is a precious piece still treasured by the family. Teresa endured much sadness in her life. After she arrived in America, the first letter she received from home contained the news that her sister Catherine had died. After the birth of their 4th child, Anna Grace, in 1852, Teresa and Frederick endured the loss of 2 of their children when little Willie and sister Teresa died of scarlet fever. In 1856, daughter Emma arrived, and shortly afterward the family moved to Oneida, Illinois, where little brother Frank was born in 1858. Just 4 months after his birth, tragedy struck again when Teresa's husband Frederick died of diabetes at age 42. She was now a widow with 4 small children, the oldest of whom was Mary at age 12. Among her friends in Oneida was a family by the name of Sullivan. They hosted gatherings at their home, where one evening Mary Rimmer, now a teenager, met John C. Swift, an Irishman from County Galway. John eventually proposed to Mary, and they married and had a large family. Years later, as John was recalling his crossing of the Atlantic to his mother-in-law, Teresa Rimmer, he described a journey which took 7.5 weeks instead of the usual 6, and that some damn fool jumped overboard. Teresa asked him the name of the vessel. It was the Great Western. They both remembered the sadness of the infants who died during the voyage. As for the man who jumped overboard, Teresa told John, "That damn fool was my husband." Though they had not known each other on board the ship, John had crossed on the same ship as his future wife Mary, who was 15 years younger than he. Despite the sadness and disappointment in her life, Teresa Wright Rimmer was a strong and loving woman. The remainder of this podcast are words written by Martina Swift Bailey, Teresa Rimmer's granddaughter, who wrote these words about her grandmother. "She would come to see us quite often, and we loved to see her come because she was always full of life. She was of medium height and build. She always wore a shawl and a little black lace cap. She did not have thick hair, but it was long, She would brush it out every night and then add the little white nightcap. She always wore her hair the same, twisted on the side over her ears and pulled it back, making a little puff in the back. I never saw her wear any color of dress except black. Dad liked to have her come because she could make work a game. "Let's go see who can pick up the most sticks," she'd challenge us and our family. With our family, it didn't take long to clean up the yard, and we also had a good pile of kindling. I am sure she never read a book on child psychology, but she was familiar with all the principles. If we would do certain things, then we would have little treats, such as going to the woods to gather springtime flowers. We loved to go nutting with her, for she always knew where to locate them. We would take the containers with us, filling them with hickory, walnuts, and butternuts. Then Brother John, or one of my older sisters, would drive the wagon out to the edge of the woods, and we would load them and ourselves. And then we'd sing all the way home. She would work right along with the rest of us. She had lost a finger as a child in England. It was an accident while holding the wood on a block, and one of her sisters missed with the axe, but it never inhibited her working. She told stories after the dinner was over. She would fold the tablecloth up in front of her place, folding and folding until it had creased to a 1-inch fold. I remember seeing her hand as she smoothed the tablecloth. Grandma was always an early riser, summer and winter. Her circulation was very poor, and the doctor had told her to stamp her feet when she arose. Well, Grandma was deaf, and she would stamp her feet beside the bed with such velocity that no one ever needed an alarm clock. She had no idea she was making so much noise, but we understood, and no one ever mentioned it to her. Because of her deafness, she didn't communicate much. She was too polite to interrupt, and she could not tell if someone was speaking, so we just sensed when she wanted something. She would talk, but not to carry on a regular conversation. I don't know why we did not write it for her, for she could have understood. I guess we just never thought of it. Those last years she spent most of her day in her rocker, saying her rosary and reading from her prayer book. She would go to sleep and would lean to one side, and Mother was afraid she would fall over and hurt herself, but she never did. My father always liked Grandma. He admired her because she was a young widow with young children who was left in severe financial straits. She reared her children well. Dad admired her for what she had done and did not complain about her lot in life, but lived it to the hilt. Dad also took seriously the Bible admonition regarding widows. It seemed especially true with the Irish. I would not say that she was never despondent, but she never complained about her crosses in life. She was a holy woman. Teresa Wright Rimmer died January 13, 1911, at the age of 87 years, 9 months, and 4 days. She is buried in Elm Grove Cemetery in Washington, Iowa.